Yang ji jimbur zirdan nimi zhang zonen hunum jimbur nga gyata bakar targan zanto shirmar to. Tumba dirje jan la ki sham tsar mechan rawar seringi zhang kamsa jawar tukji shan la yi larma. Jimi panzo jala sara de gongje topan pawar shinji lo, gongje topan pawar shinji lo, gongje topan pawar shinji.
The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings, please generate bodhicitta before today's teaching. Today we are going to thoroughly discuss the profound and significant text known as the Sutra of Great Liberation, exploring its deep wisdom and enduring teachings. The Sutra of vast, expansive repentance, eradication of sins, adornment, and attainment of Buddhahood. Yesterday, there was a very important and profound part where, when I was speaking to all of you in the Dharma hall about this sacred teaching, perhaps yesterday we mentioned the revered and enlightened Nagarjuna Bodhisattva and his great and lasting legacy. As for the most wise Nagarjuna Bodhisattva, it should have actually been the great Nagarjuna Bodhisattva who lived during the Buddha's time. The later Madhyamaka Nagarjuna Bodhisattva, there is still a significant difference between them. What I actually meant at that particular time was, at that time there was also a Nagarjuna Bodhisattva here, but the Nagarjuna Bodhisattva whom the Buddha prophesied about later on is actually our Nagarjuna Bodhisattva. The scriptural evidence I cited yesterday was referring to this later Nagarjuna Bodhisattva. Some sutras mention, including the Drum of the Law Sutra and some other scriptures, the previous life of Nagarjuna Bodhisattva. When the Buddha was alive, there was a Bodhisattva named Joy Upon Seeing. Just seeing him would bring joy. Some also say this was Vimalakirti, the layman, because Vimalakirti, the layman, is also called Joy Upon Seeing Vimalakirti. There is such a saying. In any case, our later Nagarjuna Bodhisattva, the truly significant and influential figure, only appeared in the world after the Buddha's parinirvana, which marked his ultimate passing. Therefore, let me make a slight yet important correction here to ensure complete accuracy. Today, we are deeply engaged in discussing the profound Sutra of Great Liberation. Today, as you know, is Friday. Looking ahead to next week, our revised schedule will include sessions on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Please note that the original schedule, which previously included Wednesday and Thursday, will now be slightly adjusted. So it will be Monday, then Tuesday, then Wednesday, and then Friday. That's actually how all next week's classes are indeed scheduled. We will also be discussing the Sutra of Great Liberation. As for our very important Sutra of Great Liberation, I would also like to mention something significant here today. That is, in Tibetan area, the Sutra of Great Liberation is also profoundly and extensively valued. How precisely is it valued? Just as I comprehensively mentioned the day before yesterday, its significant influence resonates broadly, not only among the general public, but also across various and diverse social strata, encompassing different societal levels. There is a long-standing tradition of meticulously carving sacred scriptures into durable stone materials. In some households for the living, for those who are still alive and thriving, for essential things like consistently favorable weather conditions, steadily increasing wealth and prosperity, and long, healthy longevity, among other blessings. For these purposes, they carve the entire Sutra of Great Liberation, engraving the entire and complete set onto various different stones and then carefully pile them up in a particularly auspicious and sacred place. Generally speaking, after we carve the scriptures according to proper ritual, we can't just place them anywhere at random without thinking carefully. If we do, for example, if we put them at intersections or crossroads, it might bring some bad luck to the owner. There are people who specifically observe the terrain and study feng shui, and the carved stones must be placed in relatively auspicious locations. Of course, as for this, Chome Rinpoche has some special methods for making such observations. When I was young, I was quite good at it, because I loved carving stones since I was a child. So I was also quite skilled and proficient in this particular area. This practice is indeed the case for the living, those who are currently alive as well. Furthermore, for the deceased, Those who have passed on, they also meticulously carve sacred scriptures for them, specifically carving the Sutra of Great Liberation, a text of immense spiritual significance. Whether it is the sacred place where the ashes of the deceased are kept respectfully and safely, or the solemn location where the deceased was cremated, or the significant site of a sky burial or a water burial, in all these meaningful and spiritual places, scriptures are piled up and carved with sincere reverence and care. That is to say, the Sutra of Great Liberation. In Tibetan area, for those of you who have personally been there, you should certainly know that in many places there are these distinct features. One is the vibrant prayer flags, and another is the intricately carved stones. Among the carved stones, some are quite large and impressive. For example, the entire Tripitaka has been carved onto stone. There are cases like this as well, and also too, many tantric scriptures have also been carved onto stone. This happens too. But what is more common and frequently seen is the Sutra of Great Liberation carefully carved onto stone and then subsequently placed in various places where there are ancient tombs. Perhaps nowadays in many big cities, the so-called ancient tombs that used to exist basically have become standardized and are no longer present. But in the vast Tibetan regions, since the land is quite expansive in various different places, you can still find some unique historical sites. It doesn't really have any impact on the environment. So wherever you travel, you can clearly see them. There are many copies of the Sutra of Great Liberation that were meticulously carved hundreds of years ago. And there are also relatively new and quite intricate carvings of the Sutra of Great Liberation. What exactly does this truly show us? It clearly demonstrates how profoundly and deeply people genuinely value and cherish this significant scripture. In fact, when it comes to carving on stones, it's not just on a single stone, but usually on dozens or even hundreds of stones, all carved together in one place. Then monks come to consecrate them, and they are carefully placed in a pure, clean, and pristine location. This is generally how it's typically done. Allow me to briefly describe this to everyone here present. Now let's continue with our discussion, shall we? Yesterday we mentioned earlier that the enlightened Buddha, accompanied by a vast assembly of numerous compassionate bodhisattvas and a multitude of venerable bhikshus, all gathered together in profound unity, and solemnly came to the sacred sal tree, arriving at its tranquil location. At just this moment the Buddha was about to, because this scripture is a classic and profound text from the time when the Buddha was approaching his final nirvana. The very last scripture is known as the Buddha's teachings on the Bequeathed Sutra. In fact, when the Buddha entered parinirvana, his devoted disciple Ananda was indeed present. In the latter part of the Nirvana Sutra, there is also a section that records the dialogue with Ananda at that time. It is also a very moving piece of writing. So when we actually arrive at the place where the Buddha entered nirvana, our mood is still quite heavy. When we used to go there before, upon arriving at the place where the Buddha entered nirvana, after completing our entire pilgrimage across India, we would finally reach the site of the Buddha's nirvana. It just so happened that when we arrived there, it was very late afternoon, just as the sun was about to really set. For some unknown reason, we all went together to the current. Not just the statue of the Buddha's nirvana made by the Burmese people, but at that very sacred place, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok also appeared to cry for a very, very long time, as for our small group. We also couldn't hold back our profound tears and openly cried for a very long time. That day, it gradually got quite dark. Later, we comfortably stayed at a nearby welcoming hotel. The following day, our spiritual pilgrimage in India had finally come to its meaningful and memorable end. After that, we then went to visit the Buddha's birthplace in Nepal. When we eventually arrived there, we also felt a profoundly renewed sense of emotion and spiritual connection. In the end, the revered His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok also said, "Fortunately, this time our pilgrimage did not end with the final nirvana. The final stop was the Buddha's birthplace." We successfully completed the entire circuit, finally. Later, we eventually arrived at the sacred and tranquil place of Nirvana. Then we successfully crossed the border into Nepal, a beautiful country, and reached the great Buddha's holy birthplace with deep respect. Lumbini Garden, when we just got to that beautiful place. Actually, for every Buddhist, if you truly arrive at the actual Buddha's birthplace, it seems that naturally, in your heart, there is a feeling of hope. But when you reach the place of nirvana, it feels quite especially painful. Indeed, in this very world of ours, it's as if the sun of this world has already been set. That is indeed the overall feeling that prevails. When you truly take a moment to think about it, it genuinely feels like a very heavy and profound mood has settled. So in this context, you can also clearly see that the Sutra of Great Liberation is actually, in its essence, a teaching the Buddha began to give as he approached nirvana. We should therefore truly cherish it even more deeply and carefully and regard it as something precious. Throughout the Buddha's 49 years of teaching, after he had completed and was about to demonstrate entering nirvana sentient beings, he should have taught the deepest and most suitable essential instructions. As for which came first, this or the Kala Chakra Tantra, it's not very clear because later on, the esoteric teaching of the Kala Chakra Tantra was also taught by the Buddha. Firstly taught Kala Chakra Tantra, and then this teaching came after. Then there are the Nirvana Sutra and the Sutra of the Buddha's last teachings, including our Sutra of Great Liberation, which were also the Buddha's final teachings. Therefore, everyone should also deeply reflect that although the Buddha truly manifested parinirvana, his profound and timeless teachings still powerfully remain in the world. We are fortunate to encounter such sacred teachings. It truly is a very great honor indeed. We should have a real deep sense of joy about this wonderful occasion. Now, moving on with our discussion on the 15th day of the second month, because the 15th day of the second month the Buddha manifested parinirvana, the 15th day of the second month in spring, since spring has 3 months, the summer season also consistently spans a full 3 months. The autumn period similarly encompasses 3 months, and the winter season likewise extends for 3 months as well. On the 15th day of the second month of the refreshing spring, specifically in the very first month of spring of each and every year, there may be different ways of determining this in different places. As for our Tibetan calendar, nowadays it is generally considered the Sagadawa month. Everyone is aware of this as well. However, there are some slight differences between the Indian calendar and ours. There are some minor discrepancies here. When it comes to the 15th day of the second month, the day of the Buddha, when he was about to manifest parinirvana, when he was nearing parinirvana, the Buddha, with his miraculous powers and blessings, and with his all-encompassing great compassion, the Buddha's great and boundless loving kindness and deep and profound compassion, pervaded the entire world, wishing to gather sentient beings. He thought of ultimately gathering all those sentient beings with whom he had a very deep karmic connection, indeed. Therefore, the Buddha's truly great compassion is indeed profoundly inconceivable. It is also extremely and utterly inconceivable. Everyone should also deeply understand this truly great compassion of the Buddha. We should have absolutely no partiality whatsoever toward any sentient beings, but rather treat them all equally and with profound kindness. And this boundless compassion is also extremely profound and far-reaching. In the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, it is also clearly stated that the Buddha's great compassion for all sentient beings, even for beings as small as insects, what exactly is this profound compassion? It truly penetrates to the very marrow of his bones. This deeply signifies that his loving kindness and compassion have reached far down, permeating deeply into his very bones and marrow. Penetrating very deeply to the marrow, the mind never truly abandons. His compassion has entered into the very marrow of his bones. This mind will never abandon sentient beings. Such is the profound and boundless compassion of the Buddha. Some sacred scriptures explicitly state that the Buddha's infinite compassion deeply penetrates into the very essence and marrow of all sentient beings. The Bodhisattva's compassionate essence gently enters into the flesh of sentient beings. The profound compassion of the Shravakas in truth reaches only the superficial skin of sentient beings. Therefore, for each and every sentient being in general, the true depth of compassion that they ultimately receive are completely and fundamentally different. The Buddha embraces all sentient beings with the greatest and most profound compassion. In this regard, I think that as devoted Buddhists, especially those of us who call ourselves Mahayana Buddhists, we should should remember that the Buddha, for the benefit of even a single sentient being, regardless of whether they are an enemy or a loved one, no matter what kind of sentient being it is, as long as a sentient being is truly and genuinely in need, he would generously give and wholeheartedly embrace everything without any reservation whatsoever. But as followers of the Buddha, do we truly have such impartiality toward every sentient being? Do we possess this kind of equanimity? This is something we can each reflect on ourselves. When the Buddha was about to enter parinirvana with immense and profound great compassion, and through the extraordinary power of his divine blessings, with his truly boundless and infinite compassion, he lovingly embraced all sentient beings even more deeply and completely, diligently seeking to guide them towards enlightenment and liberation. He uttered a great sound, his voice resounding throughout the 10 directions, proclaiming to all beings in their own unique languages. His profound and boundless compassion truly pervaded the entire world, touching every living being. Afterwards, this truly magnificent and Vajra-like wondrous sound of his voice emitted an incredibly powerful and resonant sound. Of course, this exceptionally powerful sound was not what we usually call deafening, to the point that those nearby simply could not bear it. It probably wasn't quite like that. His voice should have been incredibly pleasing to the ear, exceptionally melodious and wonderfully resonant. Such a beautiful and captivating sound filled the entire world around him, reaching the east, south, west, north, the four corners, and above and below, everywhere in the world. In such a world, moreover, a truly great Buddha, for every sentient being in these worlds, since their inherent types are quite different, the distinct sound that he specifically made for them was also suited to their own kind of voice. For example, in the human world, he would teach them using a human voice. For animals, he would use a voice appropriate to animals. For hungry ghosts, the voice of a hungry ghost. Among us humans, perhaps in the world, there are all kinds of different ethnicities and races, and among them, he would also manifest different languages, just like it is stated in the Sutra of the collection of Father and Son. With a single profound sound, he expounds the pure and sacred Dharma. According to their own respective kinds, each understands it fully. The Buddha, with a single voice, expounds the pure Dharma, but in fact for sentient beings of the 3 realms, depending on their own unique and individual respective kinds or categories, what they ultimately receive is also manifested as distinctly different realizations and a variety of different benefits. So at that particular time, the Buddha universally and compassionately told all the sentient beings in all worlds, spreading everywhere, truly reaching all of them. Now, regarding this profound concept, some people might genuinely begin to think and ponder, does the Buddha really possess such an extraordinary ability? The world is so incredibly vast, and sentient beings are so innumerable and boundless. Can every sentient being actually hear it? In fact, sentient beings in worlds with the right karmic connection all can hear it. This is probably mentioned in the Maharatnakuta Sutra. At that time, when the Buddha was at Vulture Peak, there was once Maudgalyayana who truly wanted to test the full extent of the Buddha's powerful voice to clearly see precisely how far it could actually reach. Then he carefully followed the resonant sound, traveling farther and farther away, gradually, continuing on and on without end or cessation. And the Buddha's profound voice never truly faded, always powerfully resonating. When he eventually reached the majestic Mount Sumeru, he could still clearly hear the Buddha's unwavering voice. Going even further, throughout the entire 3,000 Great Thousand world, the Buddha's voice was still there, neither increasing nor decreasing. At this particular and significant point, the Buddha also knew full well that Maudgalyayana was preparing to test his voice at that time. The Buddha deliberately blessed him with his divine power. Maudgalyayana went even farther. In the end, truly relying on the Buddha's divine blessing, he traveled westward through 99 worlds as numerous as the sands of the Ganges. There he arrived at a world called the Banner of Light. In the Banner of Light world, there was a Buddha named the Tathagata King of Light. The King of Light, Tathagata, was teaching the Dharma and turning the wheel of Dharma for them. Moreover, all of their retinue were extremely tall and truly majestic. The Buddha's body was also exceptionally tall and majestic. Then Maudgalyayana listened to the Buddha's voice there. It was indeed the powerful voice of Shakyamuni Buddha. Even there, in that distant place, he could still hear it just the same, at that precise moment, which should have been around noon, when they were making offerings for the meal. They looked at Shravakas and the Buddha and saw their tall and majestic figures. Then the truly large bowls they used to receive offerings, the alms bowls of the monastics, were also especially and remarkably large in size. At that time, Maudgalyayana was standing next to an especially large alms bowl. Many of the monks began to heartily laugh at him. They all said, "From where did this tiny little bug truly come from?" And he was even wearing a monk's robe. They started to ridicule him. At that moment, the Tathagata, King of Radiance, said, "You must not belittle or insult him. In fact, he is truly remarkable. He is from the Shakyamuni Buddha's pure land. Maudgalyayana, foremost in supernatural powers, ended up appearing like a tiny bug when he arrived there. He said, 'This is Maudgalyayana, the one with the greatest supernatural powers. He is truly formidable.' He told the Tathagata, King of Radiance, 'This time I came to truly try to precisely measure the revered voice of the enlightened Shakyamuni Buddha. But now I am extremely exhausted. I've reached this point and I'm completely worn out, utterly exhausted.' At that time, the Tathagata, King of Radiance, said, 'You absolutely should not attempt to measure your Buddha's voice in this manner, as such an action would constitute a serious transgression. Therefore, it is imperative that you sincerely repent for this misstep.' Maudgalyayana also repented there. He wanted to return now, but he couldn't find his way back. He didn't know which direction to go. So he asked the great Tathagata, the King of Radiance. He said, 'It would be best for you because when you came it was mostly due to your Buddha's blessings. If you relied solely on your own supernatural powers, you wouldn't be able to get here even in a kalpa. If you want to return now, you should head in the direction of Shakyamuni Buddha. If you prostrate, join your palms and pray, you will be able to return.' He said, 'I don't know which direction it is now. Where is the east?' So, with a clear gesture, he pointed out the east to him and specifically told him to pray. After that significant moment, he gradually made his way back. Upon his eventual return, the Buddha also told him, 'The Tathagata's perfect and sublime form is actually boundless and limitless. It is just like infinite space, without any boundaries or limits at all. That is why the Buddha's voice spreads throughout the world with great power.' Of course, some people may not be particularly familiar with the profound teachings of the Buddhist scriptures, and consequently may not fully grasp or comprehend them very well. It's quite similar to listening to an ancient myth or a captivating legend. Is it really possible for such things to exist? There might be such doubts, but if we have some profound realization of the truly profound teachings and the vastness of this entire world, then we can fully and completely accept all of this. So, as was mentioned above, when the Buddha was preparing to teach, he would first sometimes use various sounds to draw in all sentient beings, and then he would proceed to teach the Dharma, and sometimes emit a captivating light to attract sentient beings. Therefore, when the Buddha gave teachings, the specific circumstances were not always exactly the same each and every time. So, at that particular moment, he emitted such a profound sound, clearly telling all sentient beings what exactly did he truly say. Today, the Tathagata, the perfectly enlightened one, out of compassion for sentient beings, protects them, embraces sentient beings, regards all beings equally as if they were his only child. Here it says, now today, the Tathagata, the perfectly enlightened one, is here, using his truly great and all-knowing wisdom, which is completely understands and deeply cares for all sentient beings. Or you could also say, with profound omniscience. Or, to put it another way, today his all-knowing wisdom is truly caring for all sentient beings. And then, with immense compassion and boundless mercy for all beings. As just mentioned, the Buddha's words are indeed like this. He truly embraces all sentient beings with profound compassion, always and with great care. We know that when the Buddha was still on the path of practice, some people insulted him, some people hit him, some people harmed him, some people slandered him. But instead of seeking revenge, however, he actually treated them as his very best and most cherished disciples and embraced them wholeheartedly. So sometimes, as devoted Mahayana Buddhists, sometimes I truly feel that we Buddhists are actually quite ashamed. Although some monastics wear traditional robes, their inner spiritual hearts have not genuinely changed at all. Conversely, some dedicated Buddhists, although they haven't changed their everyday clothes, are deeply committed lay practitioners. Devout female followers known as upasikas and devoted male followers referred to as upasakas. But in reality, their hearts are still the same as before. Exactly the same as before they started learning Buddhism. If it's time to take revenge, they take revenge. If it's time to settle scores, they settle scores. If someone should be ignored, they ignore them, just as before. Before you ever studied Buddhism, you were like this too. Whether it's your way of living or your way of practicing, it's basically the same as worldly people, clearly distinguishing between friends and enemies. If you don't mess with me, I won't mess with you. If you mess with me, I absolutely have to get back at you. This kind of attitude hasn't changed at all. But the Buddha was completely different. If the Buddha were like this too, then he would never have been able to guide sentient beings. You see, sentient beings are so stubborn and hard to transform. No matter how much benefit you try to bring them, they end up hurting you even more in return. If that were truly the case, the Buddha would definitely cut ties completely and never bother with them ever again. He would simply say, I will never save you again, and that would be the end of it. So sometimes, in the process of studying Mahayana Buddhism, we should also reflecting inwardly on your own mind is extremely important. If all you do is get a refuge certificate in the beginning, or just receive a Dharma teaching, or take a Dharma name during the ceremony, these are just one aspect, an external formality without inner transformation at all. It's fine to do these things. But what's more important above all else is whether your mind has changed through true practice over time. If your mind hasn't changed at all whatsoever, then basically the outward appearance is just participating in some Buddhist activities alone, reciting mantras verbally, or perhaps holding a prayer wheel or a mala in your hand. Many of these are just external rituals, merely outward forms. You may indeed be called a Buddhist, but that is only a superficial designation. But as for our inner state of consciousness and being, are you a Hinayana Buddhist among Buddhists, a worldly Buddhist, or a Mahayana Buddhist who truly practices the path? There's no need to ask others. Nowadays, some people often ask about this and that. For example, around our main prayer hall now, if there's a significant leak, they have to ask a revered living Buddha or a wise Lama to divine it, and then they want to know the result of the divination. It should just be a problem with the water pipes. Sometimes we might find this whole concept really quite foolish. However, the individuals who are actually performing the divination are in fact exceptionally clever and insightful. It's just a problem with the water pipes. So now some of us are really unbelievably foolish, so foolish it's hard to imagine. Even for something like a water leak or anything at all, they have to do a divination. But there's really nothing to divine about these things. Construction is just construction. Doing things is just doing things. If I have a tumor here, should I do a divination? Actually, there's really nothing to divine about it. If it needs to be removed, it should be removed. They used to say that I had this and that right here, and I looked at the photos myself, and there really was a rather large mass indeed. They then asked if they should proceed with a divination. I said, no need for divination, just remove it quickly. So for some of us, whether it's about our own spiritual practice, whether we succeed or not, asking others about these things isn't important. Divination isn't important. Fortune telling isn't important. What's most important? What was the Buddha like? What exactly were the great bodhisattvas like? What was their profound attitude toward all sentient beings? And what am I truly like? When we observe in this way, it should actually be clear at a glance. I think for many people, whether my practice is successful or not, what will happen to me in the future, it depends on your current actions. If you hadn't taken refuge before, how many years have you been studying up to now? What is your mindset like now? At this point, it should be relatively easy. This is relatively clear. As I just said, he possesses profound compassion for all sentient beings, actively protecting and diligently saving every single sentient being from suffering and harm. First, he feels compassion for sentient beings, then protects and saves sentient beings, and then gathers in sentient beings. So, what kind of sentient beings does he gather in? All sentient beings are regarded as if they were his only child. Just as it is said in the Manjushri's question Sutra, Devas and Rahu, their profound love and tender care are without any distinction. At that time, the Buddha regarded Devadatta and his own biological son Rahula with absolutely no difference in love whatsoever. So the Buddha's profound and boundless compassion for all sentient beings was truly like this, an extraordinary and unwavering example. But as for us, we often declare ourselves to be devoted Buddhists, and we also frequently articulate and express this very sentiment to countless others all the time. But in reality, if someone harms you, or someone actually really deliberately speaks ill about you, or someone steals your things, or if someone begins to inflict harm upon you in various and profound ways, how exactly do you choose to respond? If it were the enlightened Buddha himself, how precisely would he choose to respond in such a challenging situation? If it were Manjushri Bodhisattva, how would he respond? If it were His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok, how would he truly respond? And what about me personally? How do I respond to such a situation? So you can carefully weigh yourself. We often say, what is my actual weight? Maybe I'm very light, or maybe I'm very heavy indeed. But the weight of my bodhicitta doesn't need to be measured by others, doesn't need to be divined. How is the bodhicitta I am cultivating now? See if there are any obstacles. My house is currently leaking. What exactly should I do about this situation? And my stomach hurts a bit. Can you please do a divination for me? Nowadays, it seems some people really want to do a divination for almost everything. I used to meet some fellow villagers who actually love doing divinations the most. This is also a clear sign of a relatively low level of genuine Buddhist understanding, and also a kind of blind faith, truly lacking in authentic right faith. This is indeed a very significant sign of that. So I think for us, the crucial question is, how exactly am I doing in my spiritual practice? What is my level of realization? How many pounds of bodhicitta do I have? You can weigh it yourself, right? When you encounter sentient beings you don't like to see, or sentient beings who harm you, or even those who truly harm you behind your back, how do you treat them with kindness? If it were Shakyamuni Buddha back then, how would he have treated them in his wisdom? In this way, I think it's very easy to understand. Next, let us talk about those who are without refuge at all, because at that time the Buddha was like this. He told sentient beings, for those without refuge, he would become their refuge. For those who had not seen their Buddha nature, he enabled them to see their Buddha nature. In this world, those who have no refuge, those individuals who have absolutely no support, who have no spiritual refuge whatsoever, and those who have no physical refuge at all, what exactly would they become? He would become the refuge teacher and place of refuge for sentient beings. Just as it is also said in the Mahasamnipata Sutra, the Buddha does not despise beings of evil lineage. He regards all as his own children. Therefore, we take refuge in the Buddha. The Buddha treats all sentient beings with equal great compassion and deep loving care, truly indeed. He does not dislike those who are wicked beings, those who are unattractive beings, those who are poor beings, those who are disabled individuals, or for those who are quick-tempered and easily angered beings. He would never do that. He consistently treats all living beings with kindness and respect, always, as if they were his own cherished children, deeply loved and carefully nurtured. For this profound and heartfelt reason, he dedicated himself completely to their well-being. This is actually precisely why we take refuge in the Buddha. Because the Buddha possesses such great compassion, why do we take refuge in the Buddha in this way? The main reason for taking refuge in the Buddha is that the Buddha treats all sentient beings with profound compassion and diligently protects them, embracing them fully with his compassion. This is also the philosophy of the Buddha's compassionate and wise teachings, and the monastic community that follows him is the same without exception. Precisely because of this, when we encounter difficulties in our daily practice, if we pray for help, he will become our truly steadfast protector. In our world, if there were a truly remarkable person indeed, for example, an official or a leader, who wouldn't want to take refuge in them, he has no conditions at all. All of his entire power is devoted to you. However, there is no such person. The people we rely on in this world are not like this. For example, the people we rely on emotionally in this world, if you treat me well, I treat you well. But if you don't treat me well, then I might want to harm you. This is how worldly people are. Our politicians are the same way. If your country or you as a person treat me well, then I will trade with you, and so on in various ways. It's just like the relationship between China and the US. But if you don't treat me well, then I might potentially show off my nuclear weapons, or indeed do whatever it certainly takes to truly confront you, without a doubt.
This is how it is in politics. So when it comes to what we truly rely on, why is it that Buddhist thought should be what we depend on at all times in every situation? There are profound and essential reasons for this. The Tathagata is inconceivable. The Dharma is inconceivable. The Sangha is inconceivable. By having inconceivable faith in the three jewels, one attains inconceivable results and aspires to be reborn in the land of ultimate bliss ultimately.
Sangye Chukyang Samma Kyang Pagpo Gendon Samma Kyaw Samma Kyaw La Tafshin Number Mamba Samma Kyaw Namtak Zangde Shkiver.
I recently encountered a sacred sutra, specifically one known as the Long Life Wisdom Dharani Sutra, which appears to be a remarkably concise and significant scripture originating from the Tibetan tradition. This sutra contains the scriptural evidence I just cited. It seems in the past said, Buddha's qualities are inconceivable, Dharma's qualities are inconceivable. This is a scriptural citation referred to. But this particular citation is a bit different. So it is said that the Buddha is inconceivable, the Dharma inconceivable, Sangha inconceivable, faith in the inconceivable three jewels. Then, if faith arises, the resultant ripening we obtain is also inconceivable. Therefore, may I be reborn in the Pure Land. This is indeed the kind of aspiration it truly is. I once saw a Pure Land Sutra like this, for example, a Pure Land Sutra in Tibetan, you see, actually. And in Chinese, there is a short Dharani Sutra text. But I couldn't find this particular scriptural citation in them despite my efforts. So, in reality, if we have faith in the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the benefits we receive are inconceivable as well. Let's not talk about the future for now or in the 6 realms of samsara, but temporarily. Earth, water, fire, wind, including plagues, illnesses, coronavirus. At such times, having refuge of three jewels is wonderful. This year, I felt it. Back then, around January and February, things were quite serious here, weren't they? But for those who have taken refuge in the Buddha, everyone had a deep and abiding sense of reliance and trust in their hearts. During that period, we single-mindedly recited the Buddha's name, no matter what happened. At that time, sometimes even family members were quarantined, and the entire world around us was completely different from before. At such challenging times, if you have some genuine faith, you naturally pray in your heart, and this kind of heartfelt prayer has a truly significant and profound effect on your own mind as well. Especially after the recent global pandemic, as you all undoubtedly know, people's daily lives now are completely and utterly different from before. This is indeed the case in many countries around the world. In the past, we used to think that our primary refuge was our comfortable house, our reliable car, or the money safely stored in the bank. But now, all of a sudden, all our ways of life have changed dramatically throughout the modern world. In the past, we thought that a company doing very well and achieving great financial success was probably very successful, or that someone in a high leadership position should be very successful. But after the whole world has been reshuffled, many of us no longer feel secure in our hearts. There is no sense of security. Now many people are extremely anxious. Because in the past, we genuinely felt that we were relatively successful, as if we were relying entirely on material things as our ultimate refuge. But material things are constantly changing, and these changes are not what you might imagine. Everything can change in an instant. Everything is unpredictable. At times like this, it truly feels as if in this world, nothing is reliable at all. At that point, people are unreliable, material things are unreliable, and money is unreliable too. So what is truly reliable? It's very hard to find something like that in this world. Many people, because of the pandemic, have started reciting the sacred name of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and Guru Rinpoche's mantra. Actually, this is also very good and beneficial. On one hand, it's a bit like seeking help from the Buddha at the last minute, a bit pragmatic. But on the other hand, there's a sense of emptiness in the heart about everything. In the end, they lose confidence in life as well and choose to end their own life. Compared to people like this, those who truly have such faith, who have this kind of profound spiritual support, are completely and utterly very steadfast, strong, and truly live with great meaning and purpose. In the past, it seemed that people who had no faith in Buddhism or religion at all, who thought it was all just superstition, when they reached their very most critical and dire moments of all, They start to truly wonder, what exactly am I really searching for in this vast world? At this crucial point, they begin to deeply reflect inwardly. So that's precisely how I personally see it. Indeed, many of us Buddhists, although we rely on the Buddhist state to manifest all kinds of miraculous powers, that's actually not the case. Right now is also not the time for the fruition of the Dharma. But at the very least, many devout Buddhists are often very happy and content when they simply cannot go out and engage in external activities. Wow, now there's time. They can go into retreat, they can recite mantras, they can read books, they can listen to teachings. But for those who have no faith at all, who used to always be out and about doing all sorts of things, whether it's going to work or going to entertainment venues, when their entire lifestyle suddenly and dramatically changes, they start to feel that material things are actually not the ultimate, truly safe place of refuge. In fact, this global pandemic, on the one hand, has tragically taken away many precious lives, which is truly, truly pitiful. Human beings are really quite pitiable, and in the face of this, life is indeed very fragile. But on the other hand, it has sounded a significant warning bell for us all. In the past, you were always striving desperately, relentlessly. You could say you were fighting for everything, regardless of the cost. But in the end, what does it all amount to? Before we die, humanity is still given a space to truly reflect in advance. Perhaps if we talk about transforming adversity into the very path, indeed, actually, this might actually be a very good thing. So this place of refuge is sometimes quite really worth examining. For those who have not seen their own Buddha nature, let them clearly see their Buddha nature. If one has not yet seen their Buddha nature, the Buddha finds ways to help sentient beings to reveal, enlighten, lead to realization so sentient beings can see it with their own eyes. We discussed this yesterday. To let sentient beings truly see themselves, sentient beings possess Buddha nature. Stated in the Tathagatagarbha Sutra, with the Buddha eye, I see that within all sentient beings, the Buddha treasure abides in peace. I teach Dharma to reveal it. The Buddha, with the Buddha eye, to seize that in the mind stream of sentient beings, the Tathagatagarbha is hidden. And this Tathagatagarbha is the deepest Dharma in Buddhism. It ought to be proclaimed to sentient beings. The teachings of the third turning of the Dharma wheel and the profound meaning of the Ratnagotra Vibhaga, treatise on Buddha nature, are also very necessary to explain to sentient beings. Because sentient beings do not know they have the Tathagatagarbha, sometimes when we look at sentient beings, they are still rather ignorant. But sometimes when you look, sentient beings are actually quite remarkable. Especially humans, whether it's just inventing airplanes, trains, or even such tanks. And nowadays there are many prominent military experts and defense analysts who frequently and extensively talk about various aspects of modern weaponry and sophisticated equipment. As I listen to them talking about their weapons and equipment, I end up falling asleep at night. Sometimes I fall asleep reciting the Buddha's name, and sometimes while listening to the international news about what weapons this country is preparing, or what kind of weapons that particular country is currently preparing. As I listen to this, it seems like, as a Buddhist, sometimes this perspective is also quite meaningful. This too is a very significant form of practice. That is truly how I indeed see it myself. Perhaps you all might think it is quite a little bit unnecessary, but when I truly look at this vast world, I don't feel any envy. At the very same time, I don't dislike this world either. I can clearly see all sorts of wonderfully colorful phenomena. So yesterday, on Teacher's Day, I truly wanted to express my deep gratitude to all the teachers and spiritual masters, both worldly and transcendent. Because without them, we truly wouldn't be able to fully see the world as it really is. All sorts of diverse and wonderfully colorful things. It's precisely because of them that no matter whether we experience love, suffering, or happiness in our daily lives, whatever the situation may be, we can basically see it clearly now. Oh, so this is how it is. For example, all the various changes in the world and among humanity, or the birth, aging, sickness, and death of individuals. And everything that happens around us, it's all thanks to the kindness of our spiritual teachers. We often think in our hearts that things are just like this. This is how it is. We naturally come to understand it more clearly. It's like an old person watching children. One moment they're crying, the very next they're making a fuss, then they're playing, and in a single moment their sandcastle suddenly collapses. All sorts of wonderful toys. The elderly person simply says, "Oh, Om Mani Padme Hum," and please don't cry. Why are you crying so much? He himself is truly neither deeply attached nor actively rejecting anything. So when it comes to the profound kindness and immense compassion of our revered teachers, we will also come to understand certain things. For those who have not yet freed themselves from afflictions, help them to be free from afflictions such as greed, anger, and ignorance. These sentient beings who have not yet been freed from afflictions, let them be freed from afflictions. For those who have not found peace and stability, let them attain peace and stability. Actually, when it comes to peace, in Tibetan we have a word that means happiness or peace. For those who have not yet gained wealth, let them gain wealth. There are expressions, but the unpeaceful, may they find peace and security. That is to say, those who lack a sense of security, those who utterly lack this kind of immense happiness, sentient beings who truly lack this kind of profound comfort, those who feel especially lonely and deeply saddened by relying on the Dharma, by relying on the Buddha's wisdom, let them find peace and comfort. Just as we discussed yesterday, whether it's our profound mania or a significant bipolar disorder, many people have told me in the past they truly didn't fully realize that they already had this serious illness. Now, their minds have opened and their hearts have been relieved. In the future, they will no longer complain about society, nor complain about the people around them. One should come to understand oneself. It is indeed possible to have such issues. If you truly recognize this about yourself, that is also a very good thing. Just like there's a line in The Heart Essence of the Guru, I mentioned previously, if you develop wrong views about your guru and realize it with clarity, realizing that having such profoundly wrong views is actually a powerful influence of malevolent demons, at that very moment, the demonic forces immediately and completely flee. They become embarrassed and run away. It's like a thief. Once you recognize him, after being recognized, he will never dare to come again. In fact, much of our afflictions and suffering are just illusions fabricated by our discriminating thoughts and false concepts. Once you have seen through them completely with penetrating insight and clarity, once you have exposed them, they will very quickly disappear completely without a trace left behind. So sometimes indeed, whether it's significant agitation, profound depression, or a challenging obsessive-compulsive disorder when it comes to certain illnesses, nowadays people analyze them in great detail. And perhaps through the vast expanse of the internet, when some specific symptoms happen to match up quite closely. They may seem quite similar, but in reality that's not necessarily the case. But if we truly believe ourselves to have some of these kinds of discriminating afflictions, then I should pay attention to this aspect in the future. With the people around me, especially those closest to me, the best and dearest people in my life, I shouldn't bring them any suffering or grief, because generally people with mania or depression have very difficult times. When they have these symptoms towards outsiders, it's usually not noticeable until things reach an extreme point. But the people truly close to them, the very ones on the inside, basically people know about it. So it often brings a great deal of pain and suffering to family members and very close friends. That's precisely why I mentioned this yesterday. If we have people like this around us, or even just in the world, we must never look down on or belittle them. Because once someone starts to experience these afflictions within themselves, once this kind of serious illness appears, there will inevitably be some significant changes compared to their previous state. But these changes are not particularly frightening to us. They can change for the better with consistent practice. That's why we recite mantras every single day with devotion. And even now, many people suffer from depression in modern society. And indeed, there are still many cases like this that continue to emerge. Zhang Chaoyang from Sohu has even spoken about this publicly on several occasions. I recall there was a specific segment when Yang Lan interviewed him before where he openly discussed the profound benefits Buddhism brought him. Actually, I have also visited their actual company a few times before. No matter what, many people are open about their own meditation practice and such things. And he is indeed willing to talk about it. Earlier this year, Zhang Chaoyang had an incident. I'm not sure if we've actually brought this particular topic up here before.
Facing depression, Zhang Chaoyang painfully searched. He sought help from psychologists and read many books on psychology and mental health. At the same time, he looked for the source of his anxiety in ancient Eastern philosophy.
So, you figured it out, but this process took more than a year, right? Almost 2 years. A sudden moment of enlightenment one day? Or a gradual process, exploring different aspects?
This kind of knowledge, that kind of understanding. Then suddenly, one day it all came together, and I suddenly realized I finally understood. Buddhism, Buddhist philosophy, and the latest developments in Western psychology are actually very much connected. Whether it's their therapeutic methods or their explanations of the brain, the way they explain the brain is very similar to what the Buddha discovered 2,500 years ago about how people can eliminate their afflictions.
They're actually consistent. So what is that method?
It's about letting go of reasoning. So-called letting go means not taking your emotions too seriously. Emotions not real. For patients with depression, OCD, and symptoms, their brain's certain circuits. These circuits, once these circuits are established, in Buddhism, these circuits are what are referred to as delusional thoughts.
He even uses prostration as a method because of severe depression and OCD and other conditions. Through prostrations and circumambulation done every day, this kind of physical practice is very helpful for healing the mind.
Let me introduce to everyone the very best exercise in the entire world. It's truly like this. Wow, what exactly happened here? Everyone, please go and take a good look.
That was so incredibly sudden. You really stood up so very quite quickly.
There's actually another thing. This one isn't related to depression, but it is related to the Dharma and to the profound blessings of His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok. Let us now take a closer look at yet another example.
If you could choose someone who has already left this world and have a conversation with them, who would you choose?
His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok, he was a revered spiritual teacher and master within the profound traditions of Buddhism.
What would you want to say to him?
Thank him for generously giving us, for all that he has done and continues to give. Such truly profound wisdom, such very deeply insightful words, for giving me the chance and the karmic connection to encounter the Dharma.
It can help you live a joyful life.
Yes, and help more people live joyful lives.
They are actually truly people from all walks of life and different social classes. Indeed, all of them have truly gained various kinds of profound and meaningful benefits. This leads us to consider, do we frequently encounter various complex psychological issues? In actual fact, many dedicated practitioners also experience these very same struggles. When the revered His Holiness, the precious Guru, was imparting the sacred instructions of Longchenpa, he specifically mentioned and emphasized this. The truly very devoted disciple of the first Dujom Rinpoche named Ajie Sengye. His condition was extremely manic and quite agitated indeed, but he himself believed he was an accomplished practitioner. Later, he asked Dujom Rinpoche to confirm this for him. Dujom Rinpoche ignored him. He then thought it was because of jealousy towards him. He was a Turtan treasure revealer. After that, he wondered. He went to see Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo said, recite the Guru Rinpoche mantra 10 million times. You experience a higher realization. He started reciting with all his might over and over. When he had finished reciting it 10 million times, it seemed in his meditative experience, a monk appeared and collapsed. At that moment, he finally realized his own arrogance and self-righteousness. Just like I mentioned yesterday, some people think they are never at fault and that everything is always someone else's fault. That kind of self-righteous conceptual thoughts eventually completely collapsed and fell apart entirely. From then on, he became a truly good practitioner, full of faith. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok often says that in our practice, especially for Buddhists in this world, Buddhists must continually and closely observe their own minds at all times. Otherwise, sometimes what I dislike is one moment being extremely happy, feeling incredibly good, like Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, feeling compassionate than Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, and then in the next moment, for no reason at all, inexplicably, suddenly turning into a wrathful Vajra deity. This kind of thing is still really quite hard to accept. So in the future, we should really try our very best to adjust our mindset, especially when it comes to those people around us. In fact, karmic connections are truly incredible. It's truly not easy for any of us to have successfully made it to this very day. For Buddhists, for each and every one of us, it's really quite difficult to achieve this significant accomplishment. Whether you're attending a class, working or generating bodhicitta actually for everyone, if you truly don't have enough inner strength, then if your mind is especially fragile, it's still very difficult to have made it to today. Everyone has indeed had a very hard time, truly, really. At times like this, if we truly cannot really bring more happiness and genuine joy to those people around us in our lives, then what is the point? If we can't provide that, then at the very least we absolutely shouldn't disrupt other people's daily lives in any significant way, or bring them even more suffering. This is especially true for us Buddhists. We always say, I want to benefit all sentient beings. Benefiting sentient beings is indeed a wonderful thing, and it is the conduct of a Mahayana Bodhisattva. But if you can't benefit sentient beings, don't harm them, especially closest to you, your relatives, friends, parents, and family members, who are also your sources of support. Some of us, because of our personalities, our mindset, emotions, behaviors, and so on, end up causing many people around us to feel profoundly unhappy. When a person's emotions fluctuate very greatly, they can experience significant distress. Rising and falling like that, it can bring all kinds of suffering to those around them, including colleagues and staff. Everyone ends up experiencing various kinds of pain. So we really hope that everyone's emotions can be relatively stable. If that's the case, your spiritual practice will definitely succeed. If your emotions are unstable, then, not to mention spiritual practice, even the most basic and fundamental work in this entire world might turn out quite badly for you indeed. So this is to say, if there is currently no peace, then it is essential that we actively cultivate and foster peace. This principle is beautifully articulated, just like in a revered text called Praise of the Auspicious Qualities of the Buddha, where it explicitly states here, the Buddha offers a single medicine all beings, bringing peace, physical and mental ailments. The medicine the Buddha spoke of is actually beneficial for both mental and physical illnesses. After all, even the truly greatest suffering can be eliminated. I bow in reverence to the one who expounds the profound and wondrous medicine. In fact, this wondrous medicine of the Buddha can truly cure both our various mental and physical ailments. It is able to heal all of them. And who is it that can dispel such suffering? It is the one who skillfully expounds this wondrous medicine. Actually, the Buddha has not been in this world for more than 2,500 years now, but the Dharma he taught is something we can still enjoy today. When we enjoy it today, it is not just empty words. Indeed, behind his carefully chosen words, there was a profound and significant meaning. Is closely and truly connected to the lives of each and every one of us, indeed. It brings us both direct and indirect benefits, allowing us to find happiness. Therefore, the Buddha also said here, for those individuals without inner peace, he truly brings a profound sense of peace. This statement is indeed profoundly true. For those who are not yet fully liberated, he graciously brings about their complete liberation. This extends from the afflictive and cognitive obscurations. Those who have not attained liberation are enabled to achieve it. For those lacking happiness, he brings happiness. People who have no happiness in body or mind can all find happiness through the Dharma in every way possible. For those who have not yet overcome doubt and uncertainty, he helps them overcome doubt with wisdom. Regarding all phenomena and knowledge, those who are hesitant and uncertain can also dispel their doubts through wisdom and compassionate teaching. For those who have not repented for their mistakes, he enables them to repent with sincerity. Some people's behavior is especially reckless and completely uncontrolled, and they are often indeed unwilling to admit their own faults. But after truly learning, such people eventually come to deeply and completely realize themselves as well. Actually, as people in the world often say nowadays, to discover oneself, to know oneself. In Buddhism as well, we truly come to know ourselves. As ordinary people, we have many faults. Once you discover them, you yourself will become a truly pure and upright practitioner. For those individuals who have not yet attained complete nirvana, who are still deeply immersed in samsara, sentient beings who have not yet achieved nirvana or accomplishment, he enables them to attain nirvana. This is what the Buddha at that time said to all the sentient beings throughout the entire world, indeed. Just as when he was about to teach the Dharma, it was like a prelude or introduction. At this moment, after the Buddha finished speaking, the Buddha looked around at his surroundings. By the side of the road nearby, there was a very pure and exceptionally clean place to rest, without any bumps or unevenness whatsoever, perfectly flat and especially spacious as well. A truly blessed and indeed an auspicious land. In fact, the area around where the Buddha entered parinirvana was quite vast. A particularly pure, truly auspicious, and profoundly blessed land. Its dimensions were perfectly equal in both length and width, making it an exact square, a harmonious and balanced shape. Perfectly even, meaning that both its width and its length were precisely those of a perfect square. It was an especially vast and expansive plain, stretching out immensely. Each of its sides measured an astonishing 10,000 yojanas in length. In any case, that place was extremely large. After the Buddha saw this sacred and serene place, he paused. When he saw such a flat and pure land, the Buddha stopped and did not go any further on his journey. After stopping right there in that moment, he told the bhikkhus, "Today, here in this place, I can teach the Dharma to everyone." The Buddha was preparing to teach the Dharma here, beginning to transmit the teachings. It's not clear how long the teaching would last. This wasn't specified. But next, due to Ananda's concern, he wondered if the Buddha would teach for about a week, as was his usual custom. He then said, "Then we simply won't go." Perhaps they were to reach the place of nirvana soon. They hadn't arrived, and it was uncertain. The place described in the Sutra of Great Liberation is unknown. We discussed the place mentioned in the Nirvana Sutra. People nowadays believe it is this place, but whether it really is or not is unclear. There are 2 trees there. Then the Buddha stopped walking and stayed there. At this time, Bhikkhu Ananda addressed the Buddha saying, "World-honored one, in the past, the Tathagata especially liked some very lush and wonderfully verdant mountains and dense forests. These places were blessed with incredibly clear, pristine, and gently flowing water. The water was indeed especially good and remarkably refreshing. Furthermore, there were also particularly flourishing, bountiful orchards and extensive woodlands. But as for this place today, there is no flowing water and there are no forests. There are no settlements, no people of the country, no land, no inhabitants. This place is especially remote. We often say there's absolutely nothing here at all. There's truly and completely nothing in this entire place. If the Tathagata were to reside here and teach the profound Dharma today, then the original assembly of devoted followers would be very, very far away indeed. Because those who traveled with the Buddha came together as a grand procession at that time. So if it's this far away, they probably had to travel a long distance as well. And after coming all this way, they would be hungry, weary, and exhausted. Everyone would undoubtedly be incredibly hungry, terribly thirsty, and utterly exhausted. They might not even be able to survive in such harsh conditions. Indeed, their very lives would be gravely at risk. Because if the Dharma were just to be taught here, it would be truly rather difficult indeed. If there were food, then there would be life. With life, there is always a physical body. With a body, there can be those who teach and practice the Buddha's path. In this way, it makes sense. On the other hand, if there is nothing to eat, then even life itself cannot be sustained. And if there is no life, then the body will soon be gone as well. Without a body, how could there be any path to follow? So generally the Shravakas, when in front of the Buddha, were still quite bold in their speaking. They would readily give a whole list of compelling reasons. So for all these aforementioned reasons above here today, we are discussing this matter. There is nothing to rely on at all. There is nothing to eat, nowhere to stay. As for the conditions here in every aspect, in my view, nothing is good. World-honored one, how can you teach the Dharma here? World-honored one, why are you giving teachings here? Actually, sometimes in front of the world-honored one, because he is not afraid. He just starts listing a whole bunch of various reasons. He truly doesn't understand the Buddha's profound and subtle intentions either. And then he begins to speak, saying, "Don't you like places with beautiful mountains and clear flowing waters, with birds singing and flowers blooming brightly?" A place like that, right? But here, in such a remote place, in such a barren place, if you want to teach the Dharma here, we'll all end up starving to death for sure. Back when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche went to Mount Wutai, there was someone named Khenpo Gado who often, just like Ananda, would say in front of His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok, "If you go to Mount Wutai, then all of us here will have to go back. There will definitely be no one left at Larungar. At that time, your Sami Stupa will surely and inevitably collapse, or your relatives will certainly come over and take away all of the timber." He would often deliberately say some rather inauspicious things because, you see, he wasn't afraid indeed either. He used to spend a lot of time with the Guru. So sometimes when being with the Buddha, Ananda really wasn't afraid either. If it were indeed someone else, however, then they would probably think it, but they would not dare to say it out loud. So at that particular time, actually, according to the sacred Vinaya Sutra, Ananda, he was also someone with truly great faith in the Dharma. Once when they were residing in Rajagriha, Ananda developed a painful sore on his body, and it was very serious indeed. The Buddha told the doctor, "You'd better find a suitable way to perform surgery on the painful sore on Ananda's back. Then you must carefully remove it." The doctor observed and said, "Shakyamuni Buddha is sitting on the lion's throne, teaching the Dharma right now. This is the best time for me to operate on Ananda. So, while the Buddha was actively teaching the sacred Dharma, the doctor carefully selected various kinds of surgical knives and meticulously began to operate on the painful sore located on Ananda's back. During the delicate procedure, copious amounts of thick pus, dark blood, and diseased flesh were all continuously coming out in large quantities. He just kept operating and operating. After successfully finishing the procedure, he then stated, "The surgery is now a complete success. There's nothing left now." But as for Ananda, at that time the doctor asked, "Does it hurt? How do you feel?" Ananda replied, "While I was listening to the Dharma, my mind was extremely focused." Because of this concentration, not to mention a minor surgery like yours, this is really absolutely nothing to me at all. Even if my physical body were cut into pieces as small as sesame seeds, I wouldn't feel a thing. In fact, when the Buddha was teaching, Ananda was extremely focused. And for the sake of the Dharma, he was even willing to endure certain things with his body. This kind of story is recorded in the Vinaya Sutra. He was a truly great and remarkable person. But today, perhaps in order to demonstrate something, he needed to speak about some important causes and underlying conditions in front of the enlightened Buddha. Otherwise, if we were to continue our discussion here, the very next point would be dialogue between Shariputra and him is even more fascinating. But it seems we've talked too much already. Let's stop here for now. Ananda said, "You shouldn't teach the Dharma here. Otherwise, we might all truly starve to death. There's absolutely nothing here at all." Everyone truly remember these details well. Actually, Buddhist scriptures are very meaningful. They really are.
Bandara Bandara